We need the father's name now. The nurse's voice cuts through the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, steady but urgent, the kind of tone that doesn't leave room for silence. And Emily Dawson feels her chest tighten as she stands frozen at the edge of the hospital intake desk, rainwater still dripping from the hem of her coat, her fingers trembling just slightly as she tightens her hold on the small child in her arms, the boy's head resting against her shoulder, his soft breaths uneven, fragile, like each one has to fight its way out. And for a second, just 1 second, she almost speaks, almost lets the truth slip past her lips. But instead she shakes her head, slow, controlled, like she's practiced this answer 100 times before. I don't have that information, she says, her voice quiet but firm, even as something deep inside her fractures. Because the truth isn't that she doesn't know. It's that she chose not to tell, chose to carry this alone from the very beginning. And now the weight of that choice presses harder than ever under the sterile hospital lights as the nurse exhales softly, clearly unconvinced but too busy to argue, turning to type something into the system while the distant echo of rolling carts and muted conversations fills the background, and Emily lowers her gaze to the boy in her arms, brushing a damp curl away from his forehead, whispering something only he can hear, something soft and steady, like she's trying to anchor both of them in place before the world shifts again, because it always does, it always has. And just as she starts to step back, to disappear into the quiet anonymity she's built so carefully, the glass doors at the front of the hospital slide open with a low mechanical hum, letting in a rush of cold air and city noise. And she doesn't look up at first, doesn't think she needs to, because this is just another night, another stranger walking into a place full of strangers. But then something changes, something subtle but undeniable, like the atmosphere itself tightens, conversations dip, footsteps slow, and there's a presence, sharp, composed, unmistakable, and before she can stop herself, Emily lifts her eyes and everything inside her stills, because standing just a few feet away, shaking the rain from his tailored coat like the storm outside never really touched him, is Alexander Cole, the man she has spent the last year trying to forget, the man who was never supposed to be part of this moment. His expression calm, distant, completely unaware of the quiet storm unraveling just a few steps from him. And for a heartbeat, the world narrows to a single impossible truth. He's here, and he has no idea that. The child resting against her shoulder, the child she has protected with everything she has, shares his eyes. Emily's breath catches, not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but sharp enough to sting her chest as she quickly lowers her gaze, instinct taking over before thought can catch up, shifting the weight of the child in her arms so his face turns inward, pressed gently against her shoulder as if she can hide him from the world with nothing but fabric and willpower, her fingers brushing along his back in slow, steady motions, the same rhythm she has used through sleepless nights and quiet fears. And for a moment, she considers walking away, just turning around and disappearing into one of the long hospital corridors where no one would notice her leaving. But her feet do not move, because running is what she has been doing for the past year. And tonight there is nowhere left to go, not with the soft beeping of monitors somewhere behind those closed doors and the memory of the doctor's words still echoing in her mind. He needs observation, maybe longer, and she swallows hard, forcing herself to focus, to stay present, to be what her son needs her to be, even as her pulse begins to rise again. Because she can feel it now, that subtle shift in the air when someone important enters a room, the quiet attention that follows power, and she does not have to look to know that Alexander Cole is still there, moving with that same calm precision she remembers too well, the kind that makes people step aside without being asked. And she hates that part of her still notices, still remembers, still reacts, because that is exactly why she left without a word, why she never looked back, why she built a life where his name did not exist, a life that was small and difficult and real, and hers, and their child's, and nothing more. But then a voice nearby breaks through her thoughts, low and professional. "Mr. Cole, we were not expecting you tonight." And she freezes, not because of the words, but because of how close they sound. Too close, close enough that she can feel the faint shift of air as someone passes behind her. And she turns slightly, just enough to see him from the corner of her eye. his profile unmistakable even after all this time. The sharp line of his jaw, the composed expression that never quite reveals what he is thinking, and for a second, just a second, she wonders if he would recognize her if he looked directly at her, if anything about that night still exists for him, or if she was just another passing moment in a life too fast to hold on to details. And the thought lands heavier than she expects, because for her, that night changed everything. It was the line between who she used to be and who she became. The moment everything shifted quietly but completely, and now here he is again, not as a memory, not as a distant name, but as a man standing less than 10 feet away while their child breathes softly against her shoulder, unaware of the truth that could unravel everything. And as if pulled by something she cannot control, the little boy stirs, his small hand curling against her collar, his head lifting just slightly, and in that fragile, unguarded moment, his eyes open, bright and searching, and they land, not on her, but on the man across the room, and Emily feels her entire world tilt as she watches something impossible unfold. Because the way her son looks at Alexander is not curiosity, not confusion, but recognition, quiet and instinctive, like something deeper than memory is reaching across the space between them. Alexander does not move at first, but something in his expression shifts almost imperceptibly, like a ripple beneath still water, his eyes narrowing just slightly as they settle on the small figure in Emily's arms. And it is not curiosity that pulls him in, not even recognition, but something quieter and more unsettling, a feeling he cannot immediately explain, as if a piece of a puzzle he did not know he was missing has suddenly appeared right in front of him. And for reasons he cannot name, he finds himself stepping closer, one measured step at a time, the polished floor reflecting the faint movement of his shoes as the space between them closes, and Emily feels it instantly. Every inch of distance disappearing like air being pulled from the room, her pulse rising so fast, it almost drowns out the world around her, and she shifts again, subtly, trying to turn away without making it obvious. But it is too late, because now he is close enough to see more than just a silhouette, close enough to notice the child's face, the shape of his eyes, the way they linger, unafraid, curious in a way that children rarely are with strangers. And that is when Alexander stops completely, his attention fixed, his thoughts momentarily derailed as something inside him stirs, something familiar yet out of place. And he speaks before he can stop himself, his voice lower than before, less guarded. Is he all right? And the question lands gently, without accusation, without pressure, but it hits Emily harder than anything else could have, because it is the first direct thread between them in over a year, the first moment where the past and present collide without warning, and she hesitates, her throat tightening as she searches for a response that will not unravel everything. He just needs to be checked, she answers quietly, keeping her eyes down, hoping that if she does not meet his gaze, the moment will pass, that he will nod and walk away like people do, like he always did. But he does not move, not this time. Because something about the way she speaks, the careful distance in her tone, the familiarity hidden beneath restraint, begins to pull at him in a way he cannot ignore, and he studies her more closely now. Not just the child, but her, the curve of her cheek, the line of her jaw, the way her hand tightens ever so slightly around the boy's back as if bracing for impact, and a flicker of recognition sparks, faint but persistent, like a memory just out of reach, and he exhales. Slowly, his voice softer now, almost uncertain. Have we met before? And the question hangs between them, fragile and dangerous. And Emily feels the ground beneath her shift, because this is the moment she has avoided for so long. The question that could undo the life she has built piece by piece. And for a second she considers lying, denying everything. But before she can speak, the child in her arms shifts again, his small hand slipping free from her coat, reaching outward with innocent intent, and without hesitation, he touches the edge of Alexander's sleeve, his fingers curling lightly into the fabric as if it belongs there, as if it has always belonged there. And the simplicity of that gesture sends a quiet shock through both of them, because there is no fear, no hesitation, only a connection that neither of them can explain. And Alexander looks down at the tiny hand gripping his coat, then back up at Emily, his expression no longer composed, no longer distant, but searching, deeply searching, as the unspoken question grows heavier in the silence between them. Emily's heart pounds so loudly she is certain he can hear it, each beat echoing through her chest as she gently, but quickly pulls the child's hand back, her fingers wrapping protectively around his small wrist as if she can undo what just happened, as if she can erase that instinctive reach that felt far too natural, far too right, and she forces a small, polite smile that does not quite reach her eyes. "I am sorry, he is friendly," she says, her voice steady on the surface but trembling. Just beneath, and Alexander does not respond immediately, his gaze still fixed on the space where the child's hand had been, as if he can still feel the faint imprint of it on his sleeve, something unfamiliar settling in his chest, something that does not belong to logic or reason. And when he finally looks up at her again, there is a subtle shift in his expression, less guarded now, more intent, as if he is trying to see past what is being shown to him and into something deeper, something hidden. And Emily knows that look. She remembers it too well, the way he studies things that matter to him, the way he does not let go once something captures his attention, and that realization sends a quiet wave of panic through her, because she cannot afford to be something that matters to him. Not now, not like this, and she adjusts the child again, pressing a soft kiss against his hair in a fleeting, grounding gesture before turning slightly, angling her body away as if preparing to leave. "We should go check in," she adds quickly, hoping to create distance, to end the moment before it grows any heavier. But just as she takes a small step forward, a nurse approaches with a clipboard in hand, her voice efficient and clear. "Emily Dawson," and everything inside her stills, the name hanging in the air like a fragile thread that should not have been pulled, and she sees it immediately. The way Alexander's expression sharpens, the way his attention locks onto the sound of her name, repeating it silently, connecting it to something buried deep in his memory, and she closes her eyes for the briefest second, a quiet, inward brace, because she knows exactly what is coming next, and sure enough, his voice follows, lower now, edged with recognition that is beginning to take shape. "Emily," he repeats, slower this time, as if testing the weight of it, and when she opens her eyes again, there is no more room to pretend, no more distance to hide behind, and she turns to face him fully, her posture straightening, her expression calm in a way that takes every ounce of control she has left. "Yes," she answers, not denying it, not confirming anything beyond the obvious, just enough truth to hold the moment together without letting it break. And for a second, neither of them speaks, the past pressing in from all sides, filling the silence with everything that was never said, everything that was left unfinished. And Alexander takes a slow step closer, not invading, not demanding, but drawn forward by something he can no longer ignore, his voice quieter now, almost careful. "It is you," he says, and it is not a question, not anymore. It is a realization unfolding piece by piece, and Emily feels it land between them, heavy and undeniable. But before either of them can say anything more, the child stirs again, shifting in her arms with a soft, restless movement, his head turning slightly until it rests against her shoulder once more, his small hand curling into the fabric of her coat, and Alexander's gaze drops instinctively, following that movement, tracing the gentle rise and fall of the boy's breathing, the shape of his face, the faint curve of features that are beginning to feel less like coincidence and more like something else entirely, something that refuses to be ignored. And when he looks back up at Emily, there is a question in his eyes now, unspoken but growing stronger with every passing second, a question that neither of them is ready to answer, but both of them can already feel coming. The silence stretches just long enough to feel fragile, like something that could shatter with a single wrong word, and Emily knows she cannot let it reach that point, cannot let him ask the question forming behind his eyes. So she inhales slowly, steadying herself before speaking. "We should get him checked in," she says, her tone gentle but final, as if placing a boundary between them that did not exist a moment ago. And she turns toward the nurse without waiting for a response, shifting her attention deliberately, handing over the information that has nothing to do with the past and everything to do with the present. But even as she speaks, she can feel him there, still watching, still connecting pieces that refuse to stay scattered. And when the nurse nods and gestures toward the hallway, Emily starts to follow, her steps controlled, measured, each one pulling her further from him, further from the risk of everything unraveling. But then his voice comes again, not loud, not forceful, just enough to stop her mid-step. Emily, and she closes her eyes for a brief second before turning back, because ignoring him now would only make things worse. And when she faces him again, he is closer than before, not in distance, but in certainty, as if something inside him has already begun to settle into place, even if he does not fully understand it yet. And his gaze drops once more to the child in her arms, lingering longer this time, tracing details he cannot seem to ignore: the soft curve of the boy's cheek, the faint line of his brow, the way his small hand curls instinctively into the fabric of her coat. And there is something about it, something that feels too familiar, too close to something he recognizes but cannot name. And when he speaks again, his voice is quieter, edged with something new, something almost cautious. How old is he? And the question lands heavier than anything before it, simple on the surface, but loaded with everything it could mean, everything it could lead to. And Emily feels the weight of it settle in her chest, pressing against the truth she has kept hidden for so long. And for a moment, she considers deflecting, giving a vague answer, changing the subject. But she knows him, knows the way he listens, the way he notices what is not said just as much as what is, and lying now would only pull him closer, not push him away. And so she answers, her voice steady despite the storm building inside her. 11 months. And the words hang there, quiet but undeniable, and she watches it happen, the subtle shift in his expression as the number settles into place, as time begins to align with memory, with that single night neither of them has spoken about. And his gaze lifts back to hers, sharper now, more focused, as if he is seeing her not just as she is, but as she was, as she fits into something he is only now beginning to understand. And for a second, neither of them moves, the air between them charged with realization that has not yet been spoken but is growing stronger with every passing heartbeat. And then the child stirs again, a soft sound escaping him as he shifts slightly, his small hand loosening from her coat and reaching outward once more, this time not toward fabric, but toward Alexander himself. And without thinking, without hesitation, Alexander's hand moves in response, stopping just inches away, as if some invisible line holds him back. And in that suspended moment, everything feels balanced on the edge of something inevitable, something neither of them can stop anymore, as the truth begins to take shape in the space between them. The space between them feels thinner now, fragile in a way that makes every breath deliberate, and Alexander does not pull his hand back immediately, even though he has not touched the child, even though there is still that small distance between them, because something deeper is holding him there, something stronger than hesitation. And Emily sees it, sees the shift not just in his posture, but in the way he looks at the boy, no longer as a stranger's child, no longer with casual concern, but with a focus that is quieter and far more dangerous, because it means he is beginning to understand, and she feels it before he even speaks, that moment when realization moves from possibility into certainty, and her grip tightens ever so slightly around her son, as if she can shield him from what is coming. But there is no shield for truth once it starts to surface, and when Alexander finally lowers his hand, the movement is slow, controlled, like he is holding something fragile that he cannot yet name, and his eyes lift back to hers, searching, no longer distant, no longer guarded, but open in a way that makes her chest tighten. And when he speaks, his voice is quieter than before, almost careful. 11 months, he repeats, not as a question, but as something he is trying to place, something he is aligning with a memory that refuses to stay buried. And Emily says nothing, because there is nothing she can say that will stop what is already happening, nothing that will undo the way time has just connected itself in his mind. And she watches it unfold, the exact moment it settles, when his gaze shifts again, this time not just observing, but recognizing, tracing the child's features with a clarity that was not there before, the faint line of his nose, the shape of his eyes, the quiet way he watches the world without fear. And something inside Alexander changes, something that does not come with anger or accusation, but with a kind of stillness that feels even heavier, because it means he is not reacting, he is absorbing. And that makes it real, more real than anything she has prepared herself for. And when he finally speaks again, there is no edge, no demand, just a quiet, steady question that carries everything it needs without saying too much. Is he mine? And the words land softly, but they echo through her like thunder, because this is it, the moment she has been running from. The truth she has kept hidden, not out of shame, not out of fear, but because she believed it was the only way to protect what little she had built. And for a second, she cannot breathe, cannot think, because everything feels suspended on the edge of what she says next. And she looks down at her son, at the small, steady rise and fall of his chest, at the way his fingers curl instinctively into her coat, as if she is the only constant he knows. And something inside her steadies, something stronger than fear, stronger than uncertainty. And when she looks back up at Alexander, her eyes are clear, her voice quiet but unwavering. Yes. And the word is simple, but it changes everything, because there is no taking it back, no softening it, no hiding behind anything else. It is the truth in its most direct form, and for a moment, neither of them moves, the world narrowing to that single point of impact, and Alexander does not step back, does not look away. He simply stands there, taking it in, letting it settle in a way that is almost too calm. And that calm is what unsettles her the most, because she does not know what comes next, does not know how he will react, what he will say, what he will choose, and the uncertainty hangs between them, heavy and unspoken, as the life she has built in silence begins to shift in ways she can no longer control. The word lingers between them long after it is spoken, settling into the space with a weight that neither of them can ignore. And for a moment Alexander does not move, does not react in any way that Emily can immediately read. He simply stands there, absorbing it, as if his entire world has narrowed down to that single truth, and she watches him carefully, bracing herself for something sharp, something immediate, anger or disbelief or even rejection, because those are the reactions she prepared for, the ones she told herself she could survive. But what she gets instead is something far more unsettling, because he does not raise his voice, he does not step back, he does not look away, he just exhales slowly, like the air has been knocked out of him in a way he did not expect. And when he finally speaks, his voice is lower, steadier than she imagined. But there is something beneath it now, something that was not there before. You were going to tell me? And it is not an accusation, not fully, but it is not neutral either. It is a question that carries everything he is trying to understand, everything he is trying to piece together, and Emily feels it land, sharp and direct, because she knows the answer is not simple, not something that can be explained in a single sentence, and she tightens her hold on her son, grounding herself before she responds. I tried, she says quietly, and for the first time, there is something in her voice that cracks just slightly, not weakness, but honesty, the kind that slips through before it can be controlled. And she looks at him fully now, no longer avoiding his gaze, because there is no point in hiding anymore. You left, she adds, and the words are soft, but they carry a weight that is impossible to ignore. And Alexander's expression shifts again, a flicker of something passing through his eyes, something that looks dangerously close to regret. But he does not interrupt, he does not defend himself, he just listens. And that alone throws her off balance more than anything else could have, because she expected resistance, expected him to push back, to question her version of events. But instead he remains still, present in a way she does not remember him ever being before. And she continues, her voice steadier now, more grounded in the truth she has lived every day since that night. I did not know how to reach you, and even if I did, I was not sure you would want to hear it. And there it is, the part she has never said out loud, the part that has lived quietly inside her, shaping every decision she has made. And for a second, silence follows, heavy and unguarded, and Alexander looks down again, not at her, but at the child, at his son, and something in his expression softens in a way that is almost imperceptible, but real, undeniably real. And he takes a small step closer, slow, enough that she can stop him if she wants to, but she does not. She cannot, because this moment does not belong to her alone anymore. And when he speaks again, his voice is different, quieter, not distant, not controlled, but careful, almost as if he is afraid of breaking something fragile. What is his name? and the question feels different from the others, not searching for truth, but reaching for connection. And Emily hesitates for only a second before answering. Noah, and the name settles into the air between them, simple and soft, and Alexander repeats it under his breath, as if testing how it feels, as if committing it to something deeper than memory. Noah. And for the first time since all of this began, there is no tension in that word, no confusion, just something quiet and grounding. And when he looks up again, his gaze meets hers, not as strangers, not even as two people bound by a complicated past, but as something else entirely, something neither of them fully understands yet, but both of them can feel beginning to take shape. The name lingers between them like something newly born, fragile but real, and for a moment everything else fades into the background. The distant sounds of the hospital, the quiet footsteps, the soft hum of machines, all of it dissolving into something distant as Alexander looks at the child in front of him with a focus that is no longer searching but settling, as if something inside him has finally found its place. And Emily watches him carefully, still guarded, still unsure, because she knows this moment could turn in 100 different directions, and she has learned the hard way not to trust what feels calm too quickly. But then the nurse returns, gently clearing her throat as she gestures toward the hallway. We are ready for him now. And the words break the stillness just enough to bring reality back into motion, and Emily nods quickly, shifting Noah slightly in her arms as she prepares to follow. But before she can take a step, Alexander moves, not blocking her path, not stopping her, but stepping beside her instead, his presence no longer distant but aligned with hers in a way that feels unfamiliar and strangely natural at the same time. And she glances at him, a flicker of hesitation passing through her eyes, but he does not look at her. Not yet, his attention still on the child. And when he speaks, his voice is quiet but certain. I am coming with you. And it is not a demand, not a question. It is a decision, simple and grounded, and Emily feels the weight of it immediately, because this is the part she never planned for. The part where he does not walk away, where he does not retreat into the life that never had space for her, or for this, and she hesitates for just a second before nodding. Not because she fully understands what this means, but because something about the way he said it leaves no room for doubt. And together they walk down the hallway, side by side but not touching, the distance between them small, but filled with everything that has not yet been said. And when they enter the examination room, the light is softer, warmer, and Emily carefully lowers Noah onto the small bed, her hand lingering on his chest for a moment longer than necessary, grounding herself in the steady rhythm of his breathing. And Alexander stands just a step away, watching quietly, his expression no longer guarded, no longer unreadable, but focused in a way that feels almost protective. And when the doctor enters and begins to speak in calm, measured tones about tests and observations, Alexander listens with a level of attention that surprises even himself, asking questions not out of control, but out of care, precise and thoughtful. And Emily notices it, cannot help but notice it, the way he shifts closer without realizing, the way his gaze follows every movement involving Noah, as if he is already trying to understand his place in this space. And when the doctor gently checks Noah's pulse and murmurs that everything looks stable for now, a quiet exhale escapes both of them at the same time, almost in sync. And for a brief moment, their eyes meet, and there is something there now that was not there before, something softer, something unspoken but undeniable. And as the doctor steps out to arrange the next steps, the room falls quiet again, and Alexander looks down at Noah once more, then back at Emily, his voice steady but different now, carrying something deeper than before. You should not have had to do this alone. And the words are simple, but they land with a sincerity that catches her off guard, because they are not filled with regret alone, but with something else, something that feels like a promise forming, even if it has not been spoken yet. And Emily does not respond right away, because she is still trying to understand what is happening, still trying to adjust to a reality where he is not walking away, where he is standing here, present, choosing to stay. And the shift is subtle, but it changes everything. The room remains quiet after his words, the kind of quiet that does not feel empty but full, as if something important has just settled into place and is still finding its shape. And Emily feels it in the way her breath slows, in the way her grip on the edge of the bed softens just slightly as she looks down at Noah, then back at Alexander, searching for something in his expression that might tell her this is temporary, that he will step back into the distance he once kept so easily. But that distance is gone now, replaced by something steadier, something present, and he does not look away when their eyes meet this time, does not retreat into silence. Instead, he steps closer, just enough to close the space between them without overwhelming it. And when he speaks again, his voice carries a quiet certainty that was not there before. I cannot change the past, he says, each word measured but real. But I am here now. And the simplicity of it catches her off guard, because there is no grand explanation, no attempt to justify what happened. Only a clear line drawn between what was and what is, and for a moment she does not respond, because she has spent so long learning how to do everything alone that the idea of not being alone feels unfamiliar, almost unreal, and she looks at Noah again, at the small rise and fall of his chest, at the way his tiny fingers rest loosely against the blanket, unaware of the shift happening around him, and something inside her loosens, just a little, not fully, not all at once, but enough to let a single breath out without tension. And when she looks back up, her voice is quiet, cautious but honest. Being here is not the same as staying. And the words are not meant to push him away, only to protect what she has built, to make sure that whatever happens next is not another moment that disappears when it becomes complicated. And Alexander nods slowly, as if he understands more than she expected, as if he recognizes the weight behind her hesitation, and he does not rush to answer, does not make promises he cannot keep. Instead, he turns slightly, his gaze shifting back to Noah, and for a second, everything about him softens in a way that feels new, unguarded, as he watches his son with quiet focus. And when he speaks again, it is not to convince her, but to state something simple and undeniable. Then I will stay. And the words are not loud, not dramatic, but they carry a weight that settles deeper than anything else he could have said, because they are not built on emotion alone. They are grounded in choice, and Emily feels it, the difference between someone who appears and someone who remains. And for a moment, neither of them says anything else, the silence no longer fragile but steady, like something that can hold. And outside the room, the hospital continues as it always does, voices passing by, footsteps echoing softly down the hall, life moving forward without pause. But inside this small space, something else has begun, something quieter, something built not on what was lost, but on what is finally being acknowledged. And as Noah stirs gently, his small hand shifting against the blanket before settling again, Alexander reaches out without hesitation this time, resting his hand lightly against the edge of the bed, close enough to be there, close enough to matter. And Emily watches him, still uncertain, still careful, but no longer alone, as the life she once carried in silence begins, slowly, to be shared.